Hi, it's Colleen Schmidt, once again from Divination Counseling Service, here today to present the Venus Ingress chart. So this Ingress is into Virgo. It actually happened on August 2nd at 5:07 p.m. on the East Coast, but I'm going to be doing it today on the 6th because it's going to have an effect on us for the next 6 weeks. And it's kind of good to do something once it started because we can see the relevance all around us. So I wanted us to be able to explore that. Before I get to the chart, though, I do want to say thank you to everybody who subscribed to my website, my newsletter, and to this YouTube channel. I really appreciate the likes, the shares, and in particular the comments. Thank you for helping me to build an audience, and thank you for allowing me into your lives. So with that said, let's look at this chart. Let's see if we can get in here. We're looking at the Janus as the first chart because I like to do that. And I have already added in the trans-Neptunians and Chiron, okay? We're not going to be playing up with them a whole lot. I do want to talk about them. They have a relevance. But I really want to talk about, first of all, the coincidence. Let's call it a coincidence, although there are really no coincidence. Here we have a descendant of 0 degrees Virgo, 21 minutes. So we got our Venus at 0, 0, 0, 0 is literally minutes away from that angle. So it kind of gives it another level of importance. The chart, of course, is ruled by Neptune, and we'll get to that. Okay, we'll get to what that means. But the Venus on the descendant's kind of interesting because it really does mean that I think people, particularly in close relationships, people's intentions toward one another are usually favorable. Now, the problem here is the energy of Virgo Venus. Virgo is of a service, okay? So you get this, you think of a Virgo Venus as somebody who picks at you, you know, oh, your hair is hanging in your face. Oh no, that light isn't quite right. So that's sort of the fussy quality that comes with the Venus. So it's a little bit critical. And I think that is going to be important to look at as we look at the rest of the energies that are applicable to this particular chart. It is a chart ruled by Neptune. Neptune happens to be here, squaring the midheaven. It's well in the first house, so it's not on an angle. However, look at all the conversations going on either way. So obviously, and then we got the square of the midheaven. Obviously, Neptune is, you know, kind of like a midpoint or an opportunity in this chart. And we'll leave it at that. Think of all the beautiful things that come with Neptune, but then also think of the other side of Neptune. And I'm going to tell you that the chart will bring opportunities for all the above, even though it is retrograde. So there'll be compassion and kindness and what I call good stories, but there'll also be deception and manipulation. And that's apparent too with this square to the midheaven, because we can't really trust what is going on right now. Okay, I hear it all the time in the press. We're not happy with the news that we're receiving. And, you know, with that said, you know, another place to take a peek here, because Venus is ruled, the sign itself is ruled by Mercury, which is here at the 5-degree mark at Scorpio. Now, here is an opposition from this Mercury to this Uranus. So I don't think people are reacting very well to what they're hearing. And I don't think news is at this time going over very well. I know it isn't, because we're already here, and I can already tell you that we can just listen to the press and know that there are things going on right now that are not so happy. You have to look at this Poseidon. Poseidon is your propaganda, your news, your television. And look at that. There is a trine to Neptune, which I hate to say it, but highlights more the propaganda side of it because it's trine, which means it's easy to deceive. So we have to be very careful of that. Now, I also like to think that it's possible with the retrograde and this connection that some truth will be emerging. And that truth will be about probably the finances of somebody else. Because one of the struggles of this particular chart is this dynamics, excuse me, right here of the 21-degree Aries moon. I mean, Aries moon, not the best place for an Ingress chart, conjuncting Mars. It doesn't even sound good because it means that our actions are ruled by our emotions. That is generally never a good indicator. Sorry, I had a tickle in my throat and I had to take care of it. So let's get back to this. I have so much to say, that's why the tickle in the throat, about this chart and the struggles that we're going to see. So first I want to talk about the houses that they're occurring in, the 2nd to the 11th. These squares are about the value systems, our value systems, what we value. So you think of Venus as money, and remember that the 2nd house is a Venus house. Now, yes, we're talking about how it's ruled right by Aries, but it's still the house of value. And this, again, a little bit of selfishness. So I'm going to use these keywords because we're going to hear some of these words continuously as I get to the asteroids. So we're looking at the dynamics of that moon and Mars conjunction. Even though Mars is in retrograde, it might be passive aggressive, but it doesn't take away from the fact that we are going to be confronted with our own distorted views and perspectives. Now, that's not to say that's not happening on a larger basis, okay? But you've got to realize with this energy going on here that people are easily irritated and aggravated. Their anger is going to be, people have a tendency to act too quickly and rashly, okay? And that does cause people to be hypersensitive when it comes to things like anger. People are right now just all about getting their own way, which is literally what the moon conjunct Mars means, particularly to someone like me. It's like, yeah, you're just trying to get your own way here. It's always about getting your own way. And it also makes people more quarrelsome, okay? Now, so there's a lot of discordant energies involved in this. Again, a lot of easily irritated and angered people. And realize that Moon is squaring all three. Mars, where the Jupiter could have helped a little bit of the situation, does not have the square to Mars. So there'll be no expansive energies, or in some respects, it takes away a little bit of the optimism from the actual Jupiter configuration. So as we move on into, I want to look at a couple of things. First of all, when they say quarrelsome people, realize that this is going to be the public at large because that's what the moon represents, but also women in general will be highlighted this month, especially if they're angry. It also is referring to a couple of other things, as I said, these continuous square. Look at how active this is. Wow, wow, wow. Back and forth, back and forth. And you get things like people not paying attention. That's a Jupiter and the moon. You know, we have faulty perceptions, going to get to that, I want to use that word, with the moon is going to already bring in, because of all the squares, there's already some, what I want to call weaker thinking, okay? And the people are just not always paying attention to the details. They want to ram these things through, ram these things through. Look at our politics, okay? What are they trying to do with that judge? And I've talked about this before. This is the second chart I'm bringing it up, and I 10 to 1 it's going to come up in the new moon chart on the 17th that I'll be doing next week. Understandably, they are probably going to fail because this is not a time to push your agenda. This is a time to be careful, considerate, articulate, and if anything, calm down right now. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Calm down and think about compromises. That's what these energies are in favor of. The more we do not do those things, the more we set ourselves up for failure. And that includes the big picture, which includes the government. Okay? Remember that the government is an organization as well. And one of the things that we're having here is this conflict between what I value personally and what the group values. That may be why it's really important here who we're bonding with, and that we keep those close connections and associations, because that's what's going to keep us from feeling less lonely. You know, with the Moon Saturn, there is a sense of, depressions. It's mini depressions. You know, they come and they go. You know, you might feel bad at 10 o'clock in the morning, but by noon, you don't even understand why you felt bad. But realize that is a configuration of this energy. And what it's trying to get you to do: calm down, slow down. And slow and doing things more slowly, or you're going to bring up crisis, also falls in the axis. And I'll get to that later. So as we're not paying attention, it's almost as though we want to go ahead because we're so optimistic. We're going to do this. Do I sound like the Republicans? Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Yeah. I don't know that it's going to work, guys. And I know that I predicted that before. I just think that I know that God, the universe, astrology tells me something different. And I'm going to listen to that energy. Now, the other thing it talks about is life tends to look worse than it really is right now. And if you happen to be a Democrat and you're very, very concerned about the SCOTUS pick, for example, don't worry about it. I know this sounds really strange, but when Trump was elected, I was depressed like everybody else. Now, with everything going on, not so much. I know the end is near. Have faith. It's also about internal negativity, and that's what brings up the loneliness. We feel unloved, unappreciated. But that's not really what's going on here. That's the moon to Saturn, okay? Please be aware of that, because what happens with people, and it's really going to happen, is this overreaction because of emotional wounds, and I will get to that when I get to the asteroids, but that factor plays into this chart as well, okay? This is a time of compulsive behavior with Mars, and especially also Moon Pluto, okay? So that's a double whammy on compulsive behavior. That means that plowing ahead, especially like I said, some people just think they're just going to plow ahead and it's all going to be great. No, it's not, because this is not a time. This is about thinking and foresight. And I'm just going to pick up this. See this guy here, this Adamitas down here in the third house, the house of communications? It may be retrograde, but there's still this essence of getting to the bottom of the matter with our communications. It is square Venus. So one of the things that we have to understand perhaps is money and how it relates to our value system. And is it the neon god we made, as they would say in the Songs of Silence? I sometimes feel like when I listen to these people, get out there and we got to get this. Okay. No, you got to rethink how you're going to make money, because this is not about going back to the old ways on any level. And I know that people in the restaurant business are not happy to hear that, and I understand. But on the other side of the coin, this is not about negativity on an emotional level, shall we say that? It's in many ways getting to the bottom of the matter so that you can then redefine yourself and redefine what is important. You know, when a doctor becomes a doctor, do they become a doctor for the money? I hope not. Do they become a doctor because they want to do good in the world? I hope so. Well, the same is true of every occupation. Why are you doing it? Because if you're doing it only for the money, right now you might not be getting the satisfaction from that. You might need to think about why else you do what you do. So a couple of other things I want to go through. This is and I'm doing it already. This is a really great time for self-analysis, which I was just giving you an example of. If you rethink who you are, what you value, you're reassessing who you are. And that's what a lot of this energy is about. Pluto's a heavy duty planet. We don't have a lot of control on what goes on with Pluto. Pluto's like a generational thing, comes and sweeps us up. And it's not about things happening or not happening, it's about how do you deal with it. That's what you're looking at. And you're redefining those things with this connection to the moon. So it's still about healing on the outside of that. It's still about healing. But healing sometimes requires that we dig deep, that we get to the bottom of the matter. So it talks about emotional power struggle. This is really interesting. You know, it's in context with the moon. So, and the moon is our security, our emotional security. And this is really interesting because what this is telling us is that these struggles are happening internally. What do we value? I could ask you that 1,000 times. I could ask myself that 1,000. What do I value? What do you value? And that is really critical and even essential to what you're going to, that's how you proceed with your life, is based on these, especially these lower houses, okay? I am, I own, I think. All the I's, right? That's how that works. Okay, I had to tune down some bleed through on the audio here. So I wanted to talk about how something else that's going on with that moon Pluto, especially when actually if we're talking about the moon Pluto, we're also talking about things like guilt and jealousy and manipulations. Again, particularly emotional manipulation. It could even be something that you're doing to yourself. So it's something for each of us to look at. It's also talking about provoking nasty responses from people who might feel like they're victims, whether you're the victim or the perpetrator. People are not going to respond well to things. Remember that critical Venus that we mentioned early on a few minutes ago? Okay, that Virgo Venus. Be careful how much you critique other people. They may not take it very well. Okay, this is an angry, disturbing times because everybody's perceptions feel off kilter. And that shows up in astrology in the asteroids as well. We'll get to that in a minute. This is a time when everybody needs to slow down and be cautious, particularly group organizations. Shall we talk about the government? Okay. I just think that people who are moving too quickly are going to be very, very sorry. This is not the time to do that. And with such a direct square here, slow down, take it easy, cut back. Those things would be more appropriate to the square to Adamitas, so that you can get to the problem, so that you can face those fears. All of that, okay? So it talks about when you're dealing with Mars square Saturn, which is a really tough one, okay? I mean, even if, especially like people who might even have it in their charts, this is a tough energy. This is not an easy energy, whether it's be a transit, a part of an ingress chart, or a part of a natal chart. You got a Mars-Saturn relationship, that's a little difficult. And the irony of ironies is look how close they are within a degree. So that's some very sharp edges. I want to put it that way because I think it feels like that sometimes. Here is when this is something emphasizing this need to be slow and cautious. That's what Mars-Saturn is about. It's you get frustrated, you get irritated. There's carelessness, and if somebody is careless, and look at what's going on as these people are trying to ram through, I'm going to keep using it, the SCOTUS person, they keep trying, they keep wanting to ram it. This is setting them up for failure. Well, they do have a number of senators now that are sick, and I don't see how you can vote from your sick bed, okay? But we'll see. We'll see what they try to pull. whatever it is, I don't feel very confident that it will pass, for the simple reason the astrology tells us that's the wrong approach. It talks about overwhelming inner fears. That's what Mars Saturn's about. That's why when you have it natally, it's kind of tough, because it is really a tough energy. Okay, so it is a rather tougher energy to deal with. Okay. It also goes on and it talks about how, and this goes back to that other aspect where we talked about in the square to Pluto, the moon square to Pluto, where there's a provoking when someone feels victimized. Okay, like if you they see it as provoking. So another aspect that the Mars Saturn brings in is that people will not take being hindered well. So if you try to hold somebody back, if you try to restrict them, and that shows up in the asteroid, I don't think it's going to go very well. Okay. And I think that it's like that's going to make it worse. So let's use our SCOTUS example. Not only are they ramming it through, they refuse to be hindered. They refuse to be hindered, though these senators are not well. They refuse to be hindered because they really feel like they have the vote. I really think it's going to backfire on them. Okay? And they're, again, it's like everything they do, they're going against what they really should be doing. Okay? And they're not going to take it well. The whole thing about being hindered is not going to go well. So when you get to the Mars-Pluto square, there's power struggles, there's disagreements. People, again, wanting to do things, but in a way that creates more opposition. In other words, it's not about people doing things in a cooperative format. It's about people wanting to ram their way through, so that obviously they're going to bring up more opposition. Obviously they're going to bring in more problems and cause more problems for themselves. Okay, things, I can't even read my own handwriting. Taking care of loose ends. Okay, taking care of loose ends is a lot about the Adamito, so that comes in again, that strong square. It's because if you don't take care of your loose ends, if you do not cross your T's and dot your I's during this period, you will fail. Okay? Please be aware of that. That's another reason why I'm not too worried about what's going to happen with the SCOTUS. I'm not worried about it. It can be fixed. Whatever is done can be fixed. And I think not much will be done, because I don't think that these people are smart enough to do it in the right way. It is a real strong, and you're going to feel this, all of us, there's a real strong disconnect between the self and the group. Remember, these are the I am houses, okay? These are the houses of the world, all right? The outer world. This is a group organization, okay? This is how our self-expression, my self-expression, butts up against the group. So that's something to really bear in mind if you are somebody where the group is really important to what you do or who you are. That group is going to be very important. So I also want to point out that in this particular chart, Venus is dynamically the only planet that is this close to an angle. You do have the nodes, which are within, but only by minutes. So the nodes will be important. And one of the things I like to point out, the South Node is in the house of career and outer world. In other words, timing isn't right. Timing isn't right. Is that not what this astrology just tried to tell us? Don't push. Time isn't right. This is what I tell people who, want this or that. And I'll say sometimes, do you really want it now with these skies? It won't last. And I think that's something for all of us to be aware of. So timing isn't right. But what's beautiful is the North Node down here in the 4th house of healing. It's also the family and close others, but it's a healing house. And I think that, you know, because it's kind of the grouping together house, and, you know, family and close others. And this is a really, that's a hopeful concept with that Venus. Okay, so that's all I want to say on this chart. Let's pull up the other chart. There it is. Now, on this chart, I didn't put them on the chart itself because I do that in the computer, and I should figure out how to do that, but that would be time consuming, and I'm not quite there yet. But let's talk about, I'm making sure I got through all these notes. This is another set of notes, okay? So let's talk about the asteroids, okay? Because, you know, you saw that in the chart and there really wasn't a whole lot going on. It's a different kind of astrology. In the astrology that I do, there's always something going on. And I want to point this out because it's really, really important. I am sitting here giving you news to pull your energy in so that you can do things right by getting to the bottom. What is the first thing this chart features as an ascendant? Advice about pulling your energy in, about Adamitas, about getting to the bottom. So it's really interesting. That is exactly what I'm doing on this chart. Too bad the government doesn't have access to astrologers. And then again, when Reagan did, they only took advantage and screwed things up for a longer period of time anyway. But the chart here does feature quite a bit. Now, it is retrograde. Things are not in your face. They are more subtle. But we do have both Sirius and Demeter, which are the mother asteroids, sitting right on that ascendant from the 12th. So you get this sense of being taken care of behind the scenes. People are being taken, the president, right? He is being taken care of behind the scenes. Okay, so just to let you know, these are also meals that people might have that are not in public, but are behind closed doors. So it's about taking care of ourselves. But also the fact is that people seem to be taking care of themselves behind the scenes. So it's really interesting. And just that whole idea, people are taking care of themselves behind the scenes. So we don't really always know what's going on. Now, interestingly enough, there still is no big deal other than that node going on here. Okay, I lie because this is going to show up big in the angle charts. Okay, except for if you go out where the node is, it makes you think that some of the people you're going to be connecting with are suffering from old wounds that will make them act out or overreact. So one of the things that people will witness is this concept of dealing with people, maybe within their own families or their own groups, their own connections, people that have been damaged on some level, that have some degree of pain emotionally. They could have psychic intuition as well, but I feel like something is overreacting. People are overreacting. And with that node, I would say contacts are overreacting, or there's a lot of contacts, many. Overreaction is that too. Up here, so those are actually still in, not the Aragon, all that goes away. But these three are still in, but not as many as we might have on some charts. And notice how this is all on one side and this is on the other side. So it's interesting. This all comes in from the 12th. This is the 4th. So it's highlighting the 4th to the 12th, which is, again, you know, more home, more, you know, being in smaller settings, just like that Adamitas Venus here. Okay. So that brings us to that Venus. Now that Venus is surrounded. There are so many things walking around with that Venus right now. So we have Venus here with Apollo, trans-Pluto, which again, I think of trans-Pluto, there's still a lot to be said about it. So I'm not going to say too much on it. Sometimes it talks about excessive. but I see excessive down here. So that would, if I just used even only that interpretation, I've already said it with other asteroids. Here, I think that people are questioning each other. I think they're questioning values. They're questioning relationships. They're questioning each other, goals. Okay. I think that things are going to go really slowly because strategy is required. I also feel that there are surprises, and I also feel that privacy issues are very, very important. But I think that people overall will have a sense of gloom and doom. So you have to be careful here again. Gloom and doom would be sort of natural when you're dealing with somebody who's wounded and they're overreactive. Then we have this, which tells us, well, other people are, and see what happens is that their sense of pessimism then can rub off on you. And that's where those short depressions could come into play that we just spoke about. But this is pretty busy. Apollo is in the axis because it's zero, and so is Minerva, the strategy. And I think there are strategies to slow things up. So we are being hindered, some of us. And I think that that's a good thing. And it tells you it's positive because of Adamitas. So here we go again with sometimes delays and obstacles only work in our favor if we really know how to use them. And that gets a little bit of confirmation there. I just think there's a lot of questioning. People are questioning each other. And I think that's really important because sometimes I don't think we question enough. I also think that through the questioning and the slowness, it will change direction, that things are changing, okay? That it may be going to a time that we remember, but a time when justice mattered. And I think the way they get there is to do things in pieces, realize that with hubris there, and Clotho, this is very, very karmatic. Boy, how do I not get political on all of that? I don't want to not get political if it means that the government is changing, because I, like many of you, would like to see that. But I will say this, it does really, as a chart, bode well for people beginning to look at what it is they think is value, what is valued here. And it bodes well for healing. It really does, with Letitia's, I'm sorry, it's not Letitia's, it's Lacrimosa. So there's a lot of thought being put into that. So I take that back. It's not maybe a change of direction as much as it is serious thought. But justice is there with that. Yay! And just rewards. And just rewards is, and even though it comes in pieces, justice will come in pieces. That's okay. It will come. There's also a highlight here about siblings. So siblings could also find justice. And that kind of depends on what you're going through in your life. Governmentally, pieces could even be representatives. But I do feel that there will be justice. And again, one of the things that they're trying to do is put through a justice. But with the South Node there, Venus there, Apollo, and then that strong square here for the Venus, I don't think it bodes well for them. Nor do I think rushing anything right now bodes well for anybody. We are in a very serious concentration of like a time when we seriously are going through a transition. And we're transforming, and our consciousness is raising. If you will, we're ascending. Some of us. And as we ascend, we don't value the same things. We don't think the same way. Now, one of the things before I leave, because I'm getting ready to finish up, is I want to run through the list of asteroids that I have here, okay? My millions of papers. I'm very well prepared today. Let's talk about things. There are necessary evils going on, and people feel that they're doing things because they really have to, particularly those people who are rushing. But unfortunately, those things will lead to humiliation. It's like they're also going to try to use things as scapegoats. So we've got a couple of asteroids in this lineup here that there's also a level of consciousness. Now, this is retrograde, but it's still there. Remember, I said we're in an evolving time with consciousness. I think it's about being fair. I think people want things to be fair, no matter what we're referring to. I do feel like this is so interesting. A house falls. What does that mean? I don't know, but a house falls. That's what it says. Now, if let's hope it's not literal. Let's hope it is literal. If we're talking about the government, I'm okay with that. But if we're talking about a structure, and we could be, or a family, bear in mind there could be, or an organization or a group. I think some groups are in trouble right now. I do. I think some organizations could be in trouble. It is time to slow down, to evaluate what things are worth, and to use strategy. Because right now, people who feel that they're being restricted or held captive on any level are under a faulty perception. Weasley's here. And I think that's really important to point out, that Weasley and Helena are here. It's also warning you to be careful of those who smile and come about you with a smile and try to get you riled up. Somebody's going to be smiling at you, trying to rile you up. But ultimately, it's Williams, which is, here we go again, it's humiliation. I think that the other part about what's going on here is that there are some journeys in life that we must take on our own, and that we need to, with Persephone in here, and then you have Sirius on the, you have to think about that things go away, things come back type thing. So if we're thinking about that type of thing, the journeys that we can only do on our own, or some things you just have to go it on your own, you have to think about the fact that we might be thinking differently than some of the people in our organizations or groups, that very full 11th house that we had seen with the Jupiter, the Pluto. So, and see, there's even a palace in that house where there's a lot of strategy, but here again, if there's a disconnect, or if things are beginning to become very serious with regards to those connections and justice, those things are a factor. And I think that justice can also be seen here in this axis through Pan, which is sometimes there are necessary evils in life, and sometimes it's out of fairness or justice that they occur. I'm just going to take a really quick look at the dial, and I only wanted to do this because I kind of wanted to show you where Venus was. Okay, so this is a little astrology lesson here. The Venus ascendant, very strong. Poseidon ascendant, that's again, I talked about, that's propaganda, the media, and how we are held captive by all of that. I think that's really important. How captive are we held by the values and the norms of other people? Not even so much our norms. But anyway, this is the axis, and I wanted to show this. But I want you to watch what happens. Look at that when I go to the ascendant. Now remember that the ascendant and Venus are extremely close together. Look at that. Okay, look, it changes, and there it goes. When you get to that Venus, look at that sun and moon. So I wanted to talk about this because it brings in a whole picture. In astrology, we work with these little conversations, and this conversation would be that the sun and the moon not only equal the ascendant, which is our relationships, by the way, our relationships with ourselves, with other people, with the public, okay? Here we have fairness, we have partnerships, so we're really looking at those, and then how close that is to Uranus, okay? And, I'm sorry, Venus, because we're doing Venus here. I'm going to do Uranus. That's another chart coming up. I'm way ahead of myself. So here, just to look at that, And I think that a lot of effort and excitement is going to be placed into relationships, because I think as people realize that we're all on this journey alone, we're also looking for camaraderie that's in the same lane that we are, especially right now, and how lonely it feels if the people around you think so differently than you do. So I just wanted to go in there and point that out. I thought that was a really interesting dynamic to this chart. It does strengthen the chart. To me, it looks like it strengthens the chart because of that close proximity of all of that. So with that said, you can see that this is not necessarily a very strong Aries point chart, though it is a world chart. I think it is limited. Okay, I think it is because it's not an Aries point chart. So some of the things that are happening we're going to see, but some of them we're going to feel. I'm going to repeat that. Some of them we're not going to see. Some of what I've been discussing we are going to feel. I think that's really important to point out. So also reiterating our aspects as we begin to look at the Aries point. So even though the chart itself doesn't feature an Aries point, Pluto does. So all of the aspects that we talked about with Pluto are then very, very valid for the Aries point, and we will be seeing some strange behavior, shall we say, out in the world. And I'm sure it will show up in the press because it always does. So let us move back. And I'm just going to end this. I just want to thank you again for allowing me this time. And hopefully you learned and gained something. I don't like being too political, because if you ever saw my chart, I'm highly political. And I always feel that if you get too far into something that the chart kind of features, that you're not ever going to be objective, and therefore you can't really be good at it. So I don't like to go there. But on the other hand, there's no way not to see the politics and everything, because right now politics absorbs us, because we are in such a precocious position in the world because of all of these degrees with Pluto and Saturn and Jupiter, and how everything's hitting that Aries point continuously. I think we're all going through a readjustment, and particularly how we feel about our structures and our leaders. So there's really no way to ignore that. So I do apologize. But in any event, I thank you all for being here. And if you have any questions, you have any thoughts that you'd like to share with me only, you can do that through divinationcounselingservice.org. And until we meet again, I wish you all happy readings.